This is a Fox News alert. Donald Trump set to speak at a rally in the key battleground state of Florida with just 6 days left until Election Day as President Obama weighs in for the first time on Hillary Clinton's renewed email scandal. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith. Here today, Harris Faulkner, host of Kennedy on Fox Business. Kennedy. Radio talk show host Meghan McCain is here, and today's #OneLuckyGuy. You got a sneak peek earlier. There he is, the co-host of The Five and host of the Greg Gutfeld Show. We welcome back Greg Gutfeld, and he is outnumbered. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure being here.
This is the outnumbered sign.
Yes.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Right. The number sign.
I don't know what that means, but it frightens me.
The young people in parts of California, Jim.
Yes,
all that
exactly.
So much going on, and we've got some breaking news to get to. We want to talk about Donald Trump, that event. As soon as it happens, we will get to it. But first, we have new reaction from President Obama to the renewed email scandal surrounding the woman who wants his job. Mr. Obama was asked in an interview whether he thinks there is an actual controversy there. Here is his response.
Decisions that are made.
Greg Gutfeld, what do you make of the president's comments, or the first word hearing on this?
I was soothed by his NPR voice. I was the most relaxing I've ever heard of him. Look, I think he's sexist. I think he's portraying his candidate as a damsel in distress. That somehow she's the target of all these things, when in fact she's responsible for all these things by having this email, this private server. And there's one thing too that he's ignoring, and a lot of people are ignoring, is that Team Hillary knew about Anthony Weiner before he resigned. That to me is the most damaging thing here.
Resigned from the marriage?
Yeah, resigned from his job. That going back to 2011. That to me is mind-blowing.
And allegedly knew he was sexting underage people.
Exactly, yeah,
well.
allegedly underage, because we know she was in high school, but we don't know if it was 17 years old, if it was right on the cusp. Still, it's creepy. The point is, by not doing anything, Hillary and company enabled him to go younger. So now he's involved allegedly with a 15-year-old. So they say that if you don't vote for Hillary, you're sexist. But this behavior is inherently sexist because they're ignoring the victims of these scandals. It's the pig pass you get when you're a progressive. Bill Clinton, Anthony Weiner, by being progressive, they get the pig pass. They can live as a pig.
Well, I'll go one further to Penn State and Jerry Sandusky and the culture that arose around protecting the football team. And in politics, you know, you're either on one team or the other for the most part. And I think it was more important for them to protect that candidate than to be honest about the nature of the relationship between Anthony Weiner and the women that he was sexting. And I think it's disgusting.
Okay, so Harris, I want to get your reaction, though, to his comments on 60 Minutes about meddling, and meddling now versus the fact that he's been meddling in this for a long time. Listen.
It is important for her to answer these questions to the satisfaction of the American public, and they can make their own judgment. I can tell you that this is not a situation in which America's national security was endangered.
Wait, whoa. Okay, sorry. So let's go to that comment first.
Doubling down on his previous 60 Minutes comments in which he assured us that she hadn't done anything wrong, anything illegal. I don't know how he knows all of that when a lot of what we're learning is coming from the FBI and WikiLeaks, stuff that we've never seen, unless he's got a back channel that he's not sharing with the American public. I mean, that would be my first question. How can you definitively say that she's done nothing wrong? Do you know something the rest of us don't know, and what is it?
The other problem is what came out in the WikiLeaks was Huma emailing between Hillary Clinton saying, how is it possible that Hillary Clinton is emailing from this private server to President Obama? Because remember, he had an email address under a pseudonym. When people talk about how this is possibly like Watergate, I actually think this could be really, really, really damaging, and the tentacles could go all the way back to President Obama, because if he knew she had a private server, which if he was emailing her from her address that wasn't .gov, then he and his team knew that she had a private server, and if one classified piece of information was transported between the two of them or sent between the two of them, that's damaging in ways that I don't think we have seen since Watergate. So he should be very, very, very nervous. And if you think this ends on November 8th, there's no way this will continue for the next 4 years.
All of them, he would know better than she. I mean, who had the most aggressive social media and digital campaign in our history so far? But I want to unpack something that you said. You were talking about how far back the Clinton team may have known about Anthony Weiner and messing around with potentially underage women. Think about this for a second, the potential for extortion. if she was uploading, if she was backing up her devices and putting material on a laptop that they shared that was unsecured, I mean, think about whose hands that was falling into. And it may not have had anything to do with his propensities of putting information out. But somebody watching, they did a whole documentary. There were a lot of people who had a lot of access to them.
Yeah, you know what? It ties the email scandal and the Wiener revelations together because they're about compromising national security and also public safety. Because, okay, so the emails compromise our national security because there's classified information. But what if you just let a pervert run wild? That's personal security and safety.
But to add to that, it all goes back to her.
Yeah.
It all goes back to her being irresponsible.
Judgment.
The president talks about, you know, she makes an honest mistake. People say crazy things. What about when she makes a dishonest mistake?
Yeah.
What about when she does something and tries to hide it from the world? The WikiLeaks timeline that we got from Ed Henry and, you know, Fox News producers and reporters yesterday that shows March 2nd, the New York Times story breaks. That day, Robbie Mook and John Podesta are trying to figure out what to do with POTUS's emails and how to dump the emails. And then it goes on and on until the end of the month when they use BleachBit to destroy the emails that they had been talking about.
Or a cloth.
But to say so definitively, as we just heard there, Megan, that this is not a situation in which America's national security was endangered. And when she makes a mistake, it gets blown up. I wonder, and I'll ask you, is President Obama jeopardizing his own legacy here?
He is, and attaching himself so closely. He has no other option, because if Donald Trump gets elected, I would debate that everything he did in the last 8 years is almost meaningless to swing from one extreme to the other. But he, again, as what I just said with his emails, the fact that he was emailing Hillary Clinton on this private server, this is next level craziness. I don't believe he didn't know.
Oh, no, he did know. And in fact, we've seen the emails go back and forth about how they were going to deal with the fact that he was kind of defending her out in the open when he knew what was going on.
But what President Obama is doing, though, politically, has worked for Hillary Clinton. He is helping her appear to be a victim.
It doesn't matter how many speeches Michelle Obama makes. It doesn't matter how many times they say how you go low, we go high, whatever. It doesn't matter how many talking points and cute anecdotes they have. This is dangerous. Again, I would compare it to Watergate. I actually think Donald Trump is right on the money. And unfortunately, the American public isn't going to know in the next week, but we will know in the next year. And if you think that Trey Gowdy and Jason Chaffetz are going to hold up on this, you are crazy.
Well, yeah.
If she gets elected, she could be indicted.
But what if she doesn't? I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, can it just continue for the sake of justice if there's there, and we're starting to see how much there is there, or is this political?
Somebody's head's going to roll, and maybe it's Huma's winding up in jail, but the American public is just not going to see it.
Really White House like fence jumpers. We've seen a whole lot with this administration.
Libertarian presidential nominee Gary Johnson said that if Hillary Clinton is elected, she will most likely be impeached. But now there's an argument among constitutional scholars as to whether or not a president can be impeached for actions and acts they committed before they were president.
Can't she pardon herself? Can't President Obama pardon her between Election Day and Inauguration Day?
Does anything about what you just heard from the president, as this is the first time that we are hearing from him, well he kind of, on this scandal, does it surprise you, any of it?
I think that he's going through the motions. I said it before, I think he has senioritis. This is just something he has to do. But he mentioned the word meddling, and I find that interesting when you think about that top DOJ official, Peter Kadzik. Talk about meddling. He's overseeing the probe of Huma, yet he was a tipster to Podesta saying that allegedly a probe would be coming up or there would be some kind of hearings. So the guy who's doing the probing is also the tipster. It's like having your spouse do your job review. It doesn't work. It's wrong. How is that not illegal?
How about the meddling of the former President Bill Clinton getting on that plane?
Yes.
In Phoenix to talk with Loretta Lynch just before the FBI decided that it didn't have the kind of evidence.
Or your spouse getting a $700,000 campaign injection from the guy who's being investigated by the FBI, where your husband is the second in command.
All right.
Wherever Wiener goes.
6 days left. It's all going to come down to Tuesday. Keep it right here. We have the very best coverage all day long with results and analysis late into the night. FNC is the only place to be every day, especially on Election Day. All right, we continue to await Donald Trump set to speak at a rally in the battleground state of Florida. And as we count down to Election Day, the candidates are stumping hard and hitting each other where it hurts. Trump going after Hillary Clinton on her email scandal, and Hillary getting in some punches on Mr. Trump's alleged treatment of women. We will duke it out over whose strategy is best. Literally, next.
Call now.
Oh my gosh, 6 days. All right, so what you're looking at right now, obviously, the candidates stumping in battleground states in the home stretch, and we are waiting to hear from Donald Trump in Florida, the two nominees hitting each other hard verbally. Trump keeping up the drumbeat on Hillary Clinton's never-ending email scandal. Here it is.
She wants to blame everyone else for her mounting legal troubles, but she has really no one else to blame but herself. Hillary is the one who set up an illegal private email server to shield her criminal activity. Hillary is the one who lied so many times to Congress and to the FBI. 39 times to the FBI. She said, sorry, I don't recall, 39 times. Well, each time she said that, that was also a lie, and I'm not even including that. It was Hillary who destroyed 33,000 emails after receiving a subpoena from the United States Congress.
And Hillary Clinton at a rally in Florida with former Miss Universe Alicia Machado in tow slammed Trump on the women issue.
It's not okay to insult people. It's not okay. He calls women ugly, disgusting, nasty all the time. He calls women pigs, rates bodies on a scale from 1 to 10. You've got to ask, why does he do these things? Who acts like this? And I'll tell you who, a bully. The bottom line is he thinks belittling women makes him a bigger man. And I don't think there's a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like.
All right, so yesterday, Trump was concentrating mostly on Obamacare. He's toggled back a little bit with the email. A lot of material, apparently, to work with right now. She's gone decidedly negative. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've actually never seen Donald Trump as on message as he has been since the email. It broke that James Comey was reopening the investigation. So he's staying on message. Somebody got to him. He's doing a great job. Hillary Clinton, on her part, this only plays to the base of supporters she already has. My problem is when I hear her talk about women and supporting women, she's taking money from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which have huge human rights violations against women in their country. She has no problem taking millions and millions of dollars for the Clinton Foundation. So it's easy to talk in prose on the campaign trail, but I'm sorry to a bunch of liberal people on the internet that are angry that millennial women just don't buy into the fact that Hillary Clinton is some kind of champion of women everywhere.
Yeah, you know, one of the things we're seeing, Kennedy, this morning are reports that some people among her base are really turned off about this. Maybe it's this, maybe it's something else, but African Americans are not going to the polls in early in-person voting like they had been with Obama.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, she's doing two things right now. She's going supremely negative on Trump in a week where I'm sure her campaign would much prefer her to be presidential and, you know, talk about her ascension and how she's going to heal the country and all of her great, neat plans, and she has to beg people for early votes. Yeah. You know, but so far, data has shown that African Americans are not turning out to the polls. They do not have a candidate that they are passionate about right now, and I think it's laughable when she talks about Donald Trump and, you know, some of the inappropriate things that he has said when the person who is closest to her, the person that is so professionally aligned with her, they're practically conjoined political twins, has been married to an alleged pedophile, and her husband has been accused repeatedly of sexual assault. So when she goes after Donald Trump for, you know, saying some questionable things, it's not quite on the same moral plane, is it?
Well, she spent so much time during her campaign trying to show her softer side, but yet every time she goes negative on Trump, like super negative like she is in recent days, we pointed out when we were listening to her, her voice gets louder. She starts the yelling again to her crowds. And by the way, if I could take this personal for a second, Megan, yesterday she addressed one of her crowds, hitting him on everything he has said, including comments about your father. I mean, injecting that back in 6 days before the election.
Yeah, because Arizona is a swing state, and she's using that talking point. Listen, I think it would have worked if James Comey hadn't reopened this investigation, but it has reminded the American public just how corrupt she is, just how corrupt her team is. I know you want to...
No, I want to get Greg in here because I saw you nodding as Megan was talking, so I'm almost throwing it to you both. He was nodding as you were speaking before.
The Machado thing tells you that Hillary Clinton is scared, and she's scared because This thing now is out of her control. You used to be able to rely on the media to somehow dictate the form of this, where this was going. But it's like Trump is the tornado and she's the trailer park. She has no idea what's going to happen next. You have like the RCP average now was at 333 to 205 the Electoral College. It's now 273 to 265. I mean, the race is tighter than Michael Moore's yoga pants.
Ooh,
and that's tight.
All right,
yes,
so let's talk about that for just a second if we can, because a lot of the criticism for the Trump campaign, even this week, as you've seen national polling, and I'm just going to segue off of Michael Moore and his yoga pants. I want to unsee whatever that image might be. But, I mean, when you look at the Electoral College, that's really important, because part of the criticism for the Trump campaign was, okay, fine, you're going to get a lot of popular votes, but you're not going to be able to get the votes where you need it within those battleground states. And what you're saying is that's changing.
Well, it's what's scaring the Democrats now, because it was over 300. They thought it was going to be a blowout, and now it's just getting. And there is the argument that, you know, the popular vote, it leads the states. You know, if that vote gets higher, then the states follow. But
all right, so, you know, places like Florida and all those key battleground states are where we're seeing some of the candidates. And right now, we've got Donald Trump.
Votes. Donald Trump has got 3 events today, one here in Miami, then Orlando and Pensacola, and another one tomorrow morning in Jacksonville. So really spending a day and a half in this state. And when you take a look at the daily early voting tallies between the in-person early voting and the absentee ballots or the mail-in ballots, Republicans hold a slight lead in the number of ballots that have been returned. And nationwide, the latest ABC News tracking poll shows this to be a very close race. They're even up now between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton at 46% apiece. But when you take a look at an interesting number in the crosstabs, this kind of gives you an idea of where things may be headed in the days to come. In the topic of honesty and trustworthiness, Donald Trump now holds an 8-point lead over Hillary Clinton, 46-38. So Donald Trump yesterday in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, a big rally there, suggested to people who have already voted in states where it's allowed to change their vote. Listen to what he said.
For any Democratic voter who have already cast their ballots for Hillary Clinton and who are having a bad case of buyer's remorse, Wisconsin is one of several states where you can change your early ballot if you think you've made a mistake. A lot of stuff has come out since you voted.
And there are 7 states actually in total where people are allowed to do that. Those states are Wisconsin, where Trump was yesterday, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, New York, Connecticut, and Mississippi. The deadline passed yesterday afternoon in Minnesota, New York, Connecticut, Mississippi, not really battleground states. So really, Donald Trump talking to people in those 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Today, Donald Trump again will be talking about the latest on the email investigation, the FBI renewing its investigation, and the WikiLeaks revelation that John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, sent an email to one of his assistants saying that they had to dump emails. Now, Podesta insists that he was talking about turning those over to investigators, but Donald Trump says, no, that means throwing them in the trash. Here's what Trump said yesterday, again in Eau Claire.
We have to dump all of those emails. Can you believe this? That's WikiLeaks. And he also said, to me, this made a big statement. John Podesta, I tell you what, if he worked for me, I would fire him so fast. He is such a nasty guy. I would fire him like The Apprentice. John, you're fired.
But like he has in other rallies over the last few days, Donald Trump plans on beginning with policy today. Obamacare, open enrollment is underway. A lot of people across America who are enrolled in Obamacare facing double-digit increases in their premiums, those astronomical deductibles. So he will make a point again today that he would convene a special session of Congress, that, if not the day he took office, at least soon after that, to begin the process to repeal and replace Obamacare. Jenna?
John Roberts live in Miami. John, thank you very much.
So with the race for the White House getting tighter, its current occupant had some pointed remarks when it comes to men versus women candidates. In addition to that ABC Washington Post poll we just saw, yet another survey shows Clinton and Trump in a dead heat, 44% each in the IBD-TIPP tracking poll. It's narrowing in the battlegrounds as well. The pair essentially tied in North Carolina, Clinton 42, Trump 41. In Elon University's poll, President Obama now suggesting sexism is at play here.
When a guy's ambitious and out in the public arena and working hard, well, that's okay. But when a woman suddenly does it, suddenly you're all like, well, why is she doing that? I'm just being honest. I want you to think about it because she is so much better qualified than the other guy.
So let's talk about it with Charlie Hurt, a columnist with the Washington Times and a Fox News contributor. A.B. Stoddard is an associate editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics. Welcome, both of you. A.B., take on that sexism charge by the president. At this stage of the campaign, are you surprised that that is what he comes out with?
Yeah, I don't think it's his best talking point. I think it probably is an effort to excite women voters, but I think there are plenty of things you can say to women voters about Donald Trump without saying that Hillary Clinton is being treated differently than any other candidate. Hillary Clinton is being treated differently than the other candidate because she is an ethical dumpster fire and she's a habitual liar. Trump lies more, according to the truth trackers, but I mean, she's being treated this way because she's a disaster as a candidate. So at the same time, I do agree that there's sexism among some Trump voters, which is why Trump has said, listen, fellas, she doesn't look presidential, does she? And then, Pence says things like, he talks about Donald Trump's broad shoulders and his broad-shouldered leadership. And it's definitely a way to wink at the men that don't want her to be commander-in-chief, partially because she's female. Does that mean that the electorate's going to reject her because of sexism? No. But I think that, I think that there, in these few hours remaining, there are better things in the case to be made for Hillary Clinton and against Donald Trump for President Obama to be talking about.
Yeah, Charlie, the president used to come out and say, oh, she's better qualified than anybody who's ever run for president, including me. Now he's saying she's a victim of sexism.
Yeah, and it's funny, I didn't hear him making that talking point in 2008 when he was running against her for the Democratic nomination, but there's no, I mean, he's saying this because he will say anything, and he came in on these promises that he was going to be this unifier, and instead we get all of this divisiveness. But I think what the real thing that this kind of reveals or points up is the fact that I think there is some panic setting in with the Clinton campaign and with Democrats in general. I think they are increasingly getting nervous, not only because the race is as close as it is, but with these things that are coming out from the Comey bombshell and things like that. The race was already closing before that, and I think that they're willing, and what we're going to see in the next couple of days, they're going to throw everything at Donald Trump, and even little things, tactics like this, trying to blame it on sexism.
Yeah, A.B., let's talk about the state of the race. I mean, again, national polls don't mean all that much because it really is the Electoral College state by state that determines the winner. But in a national poll, these two are tied, 46% each. What is going to be the item that gives one side the edge over the other?
Well, that's a really good question, John. I mean, the race is tied because I think that right in time, at the last minute here, Donald Trump has managed to bring Republicans home. So he's edging closer to that 90% he needs of the Republican vote to win. Hillary Clinton has her base, but she's looking to excite them, to turn out low propensity and low enthusiasm voters on her side who liked Obama more, young people, African-American voters. This is going to be difficult for her. And she also is looking for those Republican defectors who are never going to vote for Trump. The FBI revelations reminded them of how much they can't stand her. She needs to motivate them to vote against Trump instead of just stay home and support her. So, in the traditional metrics, John, of the way that we've looked at these election mechanics, it's always going to give you a couple of percentage points if you have the superior ground game. She has more get-out-the-vote excitement with more surrogates in the next couple days in all the right places. Of course, Donald Trump has far fewer. But we don't know that this is a traditional campaign. We don't know that those things are going to work.
She has the get-out-the-vote operation, Charlie, but is that going to be enough? I mean, there are some indications that Trump voters are more enthusiastic. In fact, her enthusiasm levels among her supporters has taken a 7 or 8 point drop since these FBI revelations.
And they weren't all that enthusiastic to begin with, and so that loss is pretty significant. And of course, Donald Trump, for all of his flaws as a political candidate, he has always enjoyed enormous enthusiasm. And I do think that that's what it is going to, it's going to be a battle between the sort of political operation that obviously, as you point out, and as AB says, that Hillary Clinton has on the ground in these last days, that versus this sort of national campaign, this enthusiasm, and then, of course, the sort of head games that Donald Trump is the master of. And in that clip you just played where he's talking about people, you can still go back and change your vote. Yeah. It's a very smart way of not only trying to get people to do something like that, but also warning people, well, if you do vote for her, you're going to wind up regretting it.
All right.
And we'll see if those things can outmatch the machine.
Charlie Hurd, Washington Times, A.B. Stoddard, Real Clear Politics. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
You mentioned that Florida is neck and neck, really, between both of these candidates, and we have a surprise campaign stop by one of them just now. Hillary Clinton arriving at an early voting location inside a mall in Broward County, Florida. We know it's a little bit tough to see. Again, a surprise event. And you can see it was just sort of in the center of this.
I recognize that hairdo.
Our cameras are working to get a better shot. It looks like she's speaking to some of the folks that are there. But again, there is early voting happening in several states, Florida being a big state for both of these candidates. Hillary Clinton is expected in an event in Las Vegas tonight. So she's doing a lot of traveling. All the campaigns are on the road, doing as much as they can in these key states. Because as we've been told, John, if Trump doesn't win Florida, there may not be a path for him. If Hillary doesn't win Florida, though, that changes the race completely. So it's a high-stakes game for both of them.
And he's one county to the south, expected to make this appearance in Miami, as John Roberts was just telling us.
Maybe
so they're both there.
They can get coffee while they're there, right? I'm sure they have time for that. All right. The camera shot's a little shaky, but you got the news. That's the big news of the day. Hillary Clinton just said in a surprise stop in Florida.
She has to stay 100 feet away from the actual polling place, though, right?
That's a very good point. Yes. I mean, you can't be next to someone when they're deciding what they're going to do.
They keep it here on Fox News Channel for Election Day. Live coverage and expert analysis all day as voters across the country head to the polls to pick the next president of the United States.
Well, a new WikiLeaks release this morning raising some new questions about the Clinton email investigation, specifically the friendship between Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, and a top Justice Department official. Blake Berman from the Fox Business Network joins us live from Washington with more. Blake?
Hi there, Jenna, and good morning to you. Peter Kadzik is the one reemerging once again in the latest WikiLeaks document dump, raising more questions about the firewall between the Justice Department and Hillary Clinton's campaign. Kadzik is an assistant attorney general at the DOJ. He's the one in charge of basically managing the department's relationship with Congress. Well, in the latest WikiLeaks email, it's dated from May 2015, Kadzik emails Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta with the title, "Heads Up." And Kadzik follows by writing this, quoting here. He says, "There is an oversight hearing today where the head of our civil division will testify, likely to get questions on State Department emails." Additionally, that email was sent to Podesta by Kadzik on his private Gmail account and not on an official government account. You might remember Podesta, in another recently released email, had described Kadzik as a fantastic lawyer and said Kadzik, quoting Podesta here, "kept me out of jail." Separately today, as Obamacare comes front and center on the campaign trail, we're also getting a look at how top aides advised Clinton on the so-called Cadillac tax, which is supposed to provide a tax upon higher premium health plans starting a couple years from now. Well, the email appears to show Clinton went against the advice of her inner circle to stick with her 2008 plan, backing that tax on the wealthiest. 4 days later, she sided with Bernie Sanders and the unions who had called for a full repeal. Jenna, back to you.
Blake, thank you. Mike Pence and Hillary Clinton are actually both holding events in the swing state of Arizona today, with both campaigns working overtime to get out the all-important Latino vote. William Lajeunesse is live in Tucson with the very latest for us now. William?
Well, Jenna, about half the vote is already in because of early voting sites like this one. Now, a Democrat has only won Arizona once in the last 64 years, but right now the race is essentially tied because of a massive drive for Democrats for Latino voters.
So let me give you this first.
Eugene Bezerra represents America's sleeping giant, the millions of eligible but until now unregistered Latino voters.
You want to be Republican, Democrat, or other? It's up to you.
By combing through neighborhoods like this one in South Phoenix, Latino advocates registered 154,000 new Latino voters.
Oh, qué bueno. Ella lo mandó.
A 25% increase, and that is dramatically changing the state electorate. Well, we've already registered your vote. Now it's the phone call, it's the email, it's the text message.
That's correct.
A record 500,000 Arizona Latinos could vote in this election. That's 20% of voters, up from 6% in 2008.
For us, we're at a tipping point that came a lot earlier than we expected because of all of those people that were out there on the ground.
This is not about being a red state or a blue state. This is about standing up and fighting back for our families.
Up to 40% of Latinos register as independents, but most vote Democratic. Analysts predict 70% will vote, a number nearly equal to whites.
Latino voters do turn out at a pretty good pace. What you're asking is if they tend to turn out at an even greater pace, would it make a difference? And the answer is absolutely.
Now do you feel like you actually might show up on election day?
Well, I have to. You know, I mean, people, my family are talking to me.
Now, Clinton recently dumped $2 million into Arizona for the 11 electoral votes here. Also, there's a ballot prop on marijuana that's younger voters, on minimum wage that's union support. But, Jenna, that voter you met, Eugene, he registered Republican, even though he said his family would disown him. Back to you.
William, thank you.
New developments in a major battle over.
Here in Pennsylvania, premiums are going to increase more than 60%. And that's nothing compared to what will happen in the future. Of course, in the future, if I'm president, there won't be Obamacare, so you won't have to worry about it. I'm not a politician. My only special interest is you, the American people. That's why I've done it.
Well, Donald Trump making a big push in Pennsylvania yesterday, staying on message, hitting Hillary Clinton hard on health care and her recent email problems as well. He's also spending big and forcing the top Clinton-backed super PAC to launch a new ad buy in that state. As the Real Clear Politics average shows, Clinton with a 6-point advantage over Trump. In the Keystone State, let's talk about this state with somebody who knows it well. Tom Fitzgerald, national political reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Tom, it's great to have you on the program. There's the polls and us looking from the outside in, but you're there on the ground. What's your sense of this race?
Great to be here, Jenna. Thanks. My sense is it's tightening a bit in the last week or so. Now, whether that's because of the email, the FBI's revelation that they have more emails to look at from possibly related to Hillary Clinton, or whether it's just sort of a natural tightening that happens when the Republican base is starting to coalesce around Donald Trump. The Trump campaign believes that they are closing the gap with women, especially in the Philadelphia suburbs, where most of these statewide races are decided there. They provide about 20% of the vote, and along with Philadelphia, about a third. So they're bringing Melania Trump in tomorrow to work that area. We're in that period of time, Jenna, when Pennsylvania looks winnable. A lot of times, in every 4 years, it seems there's near the end of the cycle, a week, 2 weeks. It looks like Pennsylvania's winnable.
Well, and it's funny you say that, Tom, because we've heard that on our air as well, that Pennsylvania might be winnable, but then you have campaign strategists who say it always seems winnable to Republicans, and then it isn't. So let me just play a little sound from an interview that John Scott did yesterday. I want to get your thoughts on it, Tom, in just a moment. Let's play that sound.
Okay.
In your view, Joe, is it fruitless for him to be campaigning in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania?
I don't hold much hope for him in Pennsylvania. I think that's been a trap for years for the Republicans. It always looks like it's gettable, and then it just falls away at the end for them.
Tom, what do you think about that?
Well, that's been the pattern, but I suppose this year has taught us that, inferring things might not always work. What we think are the rules have been sort of thrown out the window. But yeah, it is going to be, it was always going to be an uphill battle for any Republican in Pennsylvania. It's the most Democrat-leaning of all of the big swing states. And Mr. Trump has had a particular problem with women. Now, if they're right and that's narrowing, that makes him more competitive. But really what we've had is he's super strong in the rural areas and southwestern Pennsylvania, the center of the state, in the northeast and the northwest. But the Philadelphia suburbs he's been toxic, especially among women.
Let me ask you about another, not only just looking at the Trump campaign, but looking at the Hillary Clinton campaign as well, and
yes.
turnout for specific voting groups that the Democrats have often relied on in the state. I'm talking about African-American voters and also millennials. What does it look like for the Clinton campaign and those specific voting groups that have helped them in the past?
They're worried about diminished enthusiasm. Democrats are worried about that. It's not quite the level it was when President Obama was on the ballot. So, you know, they're very good at targeting, at identifying their votes. Everyone's talked about how great the Democrat analytics game is. So, you know, they're confident publicly, but you know, we'll see. Yeah. It's a cause for concern.
It'll be interesting to see all these groups for all sides. We'll see which parties relying on which group and what actually happens come election night. Tom, great to have you in the program. Thank you very much.
Same here, Jenna. You're welcome. Thank you.
As you know, Democrats and even some Republicans have been critical of FBI Director James Comey's decision to reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. The president himself, through his spokesman, said he didn't think the FBI director had done anything improper. Well, that raised a lot of outcry, especially from Democrats. Yesterday, the president spoke to a social media news site to give his view on what he thinks about all of this. Let's listen to just a bit of it.
Well, you know, I've made a very deliberate effort to make sure that I don't look like I'm meddling in what are supposed to be independent processes. We don't operate on innuendo. We don't operate on incomplete information. We don't operate on leaks.
So there you have it, a taste of what the president has to say about the FBI reopening the investigation into the Hillary Clinton email server.
In the meantime, we're going to turn to the breaking news now. Fox News alert on the end of a manhunt for a suspected cop killer in Iowa, with police capturing the man they say gunned down 2 officers and back-to-back ambush shootings as they sat in their patrol cars. It's all just developing over the last hour. Mike Tobin is following the story. Mike?
And, Jenna, the latest, of course, is that police have apprehended the suspect in these 2 cold-blooded ambushes of police officers in Iowa. According to Des Moines police spokesman Paul Perizek, 46-year-old Scott Michael Green was picked up without incident. He was picked up in Dallas County, Iowa. That is just west of Des Moines. It was early this morning police released his picture and identified him as the suspect. It was just a matter of hours before he was in custody. Just after 1 a.m. local time, police responded to a call of shots fired. They found an Urbandale police officer shot and killed in his car. As police officers flooded into the area, they discovered another police officer, this one from Des Moines PD, also shot while sitting in his police cruiser. There's no indication they had any interaction with the suspect. A police spokesman, emotional at times, said the indications are that the gunman surprised them and opened fire.
There is a clear and present danger to police officers right now, and we've doubled up our officers. I think Urbandale's taken some of those same precautions. But yeah, there's definitely danger out there right now.
Now, Urbandale police officers do wear body cameras, but they don't record all the time. They need to be activated, so we do not know if there is video of at least one of the ambushes. Now, Donald Trump has already weighed in, sending out a tweet saying, in part, an attack on those who keep us safe is an attack on us all. Jenna?
Mike, thank you.
Back to politics now. As the race for the White House enters its final days, both campaigns are spending time and money in some unusual places, focusing not only on the key battleground states like Florida and North Carolina, but working to even flip the traditional electoral map. Donald Trump campaigning in traditionally blue states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, while Hillary Clinton is trying to pick off the red state of Arizona as she works to shore up Democratic support by airing ads in Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, and Michigan. Joining us now, Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of NDN and former Bill Clinton campaign advisor. Also with us, Ian Pryor, communications director for American Crossroads. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning, John.
Simon, the Hillary Clinton campaign, for instance, is spending money in my home state of Colorado. It's a place that looked very strong for Hillary Clinton. Are they worried?
I don't think they're worried. I think it would be malpractice if in the final week of the election that the Clinton campaign didn't do everything they could to win in what had been the traditional battleground states. I mean, John, you're aware that as recently as 2004, the Democrats didn't even compete in Colorado, right? I mean, they let it go to the Republicans. So many of these states are battleground states. They've got Republican governors. They've gone the other way in recent elections. This is what you would expect the campaign to be doing at the end. There's no panic here.
On this kind of a campaign, Ian, how effective is television advertising going to be?
Well, that's one of the things we've seen throughout this campaign is that the traditional means of communicating, television ads, has not really done the job. I mean, Hillary Clinton has outspent Donald Trump by millions, and he's still in it. Ultimately, I think what we have here is a game of hot potato. Whichever candidate ends up having the last 10 days of bad media coverage might end up being on the losing end of this thing. And right now, you'd have to say Hillary Clinton is the one with the bad coverage.
Well, what do you think about that hot potato analogy, Simon?
Well, look, it's the final week, right? Everyone's going to spend all of their money. They're going to put all their surrogates out. They're going to do everything they can. That's what the campaigns are for. I think, look, Democrats feel pretty good about where we are. It's clearly not where we were a few weeks ago. We still have, in many polls, a 3, 4, 5-point lead. We're still ahead in the Electoral College. But we're not going to leave, we're not going to unilaterally disarm here. I mean, we're going to throw everything we can at the end, and I think we're pretty confident of victory next week.
At the same time, Ian, I mean, as you said, Donald Trump has not run a traditional campaign. He has not spent the kind of money, not bought the kind of ads that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats have. Can he pull it out, despite the fact that he doesn't have the resources, the kind of money in the bank that her campaign has?
Well, I think he's still the underdog, but there's no doubt he's closing. I mean, if you look at some of the states you mentioned, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, traditionally blue states, he is closing the gap in those states. And even if he doesn't win Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, that benefit is going to go down ballot. If he loses Wisconsin by, say, 3 points, Ron Johnson's coming back to the Senate. If he loses Pennsylvania by 5 points, Pat Toomey's coming back to the Senate. So there are implications beyond the presidential race for what these traditionally blue states may mean for down ballot races.
Yeah, there is the suggestion, Simon, that Hillary Clinton's campaign is feeling the same kind of heat in places like Colorado, that they want to try to lift down ballot Democrat candidates.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's funny to hear states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania be described as blue states. I mean, the Pennsylvania congressional delegation is more than 2-to-1 Republican, right? There's a Republican senator, fighting for for re-election. Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, you've got a Republican governor. These are battleground states. I mean, please, guys, come on. I mean, these are traditional battleground states. And what's interesting to me is that the campaign that's expanded the map has been the Democrats. And we now have Arizona leaning towards Hillary Clinton, North Carolina leaning towards Hillary Clinton. Trump will probably end up flipping Iowa and Ohio, right? But so the Democrats have successfully added more states to what's called their blue wall. And I think we're coming out of this, again, feeling good in the final days. We're going to leave everything on the playing field. There's no doubt about it.
Donald Trump has said that there is a silent majority out there, Ian, that there are a lot of people who are ready to vote for him, but maybe just don't talk about it publicly. Is that something he can count on in these last 6 days?
Well, I don't know if you want to necessarily count on that. I mean, it's tough to determine if there is a silent majority out there, if they're not showing up in the polls. But like I said, at this point, I mean, he's got to throw everything out there. He's got to try to get states where, he traditionally couldn't get. Look, even if he gets Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina, he still needs to be able to add states to get to 270. It's a very daunting map for Donald Trump. But the fact that he is still in this thing a week out from the election is amazing, quite frankly.
Ian Pryor from the Republican side, Simon Rosenberg from the Democratic side. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And it's getting a lot of attention. The group claims thousands of voters are being illegally removed from the polls in North Carolina, from voting rolls. The head of the state's chapter says a disproportionate number of those voters are black and calls North Carolina ground zero for voter suppression. Eric Esther is a criminal defense attorney. Richard St. Paul is also a defense attorney, former prosecutor as well. So let's just underscore this because timing matters. And here we are a few days before the election. North Carolina is a tight swing state. Barack Obama won by less than a percentage point in 2008. Mitt Romney won in 2012. So it's very tense Every vote matters in North Carolina. Richard, you've done some work in the past for the NAACP. Just tell us a little bit about this case and what you see, what stands out most to you.
Sure. So I'm the legal redress for the New Rochelle branch of the NAACP, which is in New York. I've also been the HAVA, Help America Vote Act legal director for West Virginia under the Bush-Cheney campaign. So I've been involved in ballot security for a number of years. Here's what's happening. There's a federal law, the National Voter Registration Act, which requires if you are going to purge your list, it has to be done 90 days before the federal election. The NAACP is claiming that the state of North Carolina is trying to purge their list within that 90 days. So they're saying that they're violating the National Voter Registration Act. North Carolina is saying, hey, we have a state law that allows us to purge people, and so our state law should trump. And I don't think that's correct, because states take money from the federal government and they say we consent to follow that federal law, in this case the National Voter Registration Act. So I think the federal law will trump if in fact there is a violation. Of course, these are all allegations at this point.
Eric, what do you think?
North Carolina has to understand that the federal law trumps any state law, but it is a voter suppression tactic. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, so I'm very accustomed to different ways that different groups try to suppress voters, and intimidation as well as taking people off the polls is a couple of those tactics. So we have to really pay attention to these lawsuits, because this is just the beginning, Jenna. There are going to be probably hundreds starting Monday and Tuesday, especially after the election really starts. These people are going to file lawsuits. They're going to protest elections. Although we think that the election will be done next week, I think it'll just be the beginning of several big legal battles.
The NAACP, Richard, says that why they're raising red flag in particular is that the counties most affected are majority black voters in those counties. So you have that as being a central part of the lawsuit. On the other hand, you also have North Carolina being a state where there's been a huge flux of migration. Demographics have changed quite a bit because you have a lot of people moving from the north. Some say North Carolina is less of a southern state and more of a mid-Atlantic state at this time because of the changes over the last several years. So how do you think this works out? Because you do want voting rolls to be accurate. On the same side, you don't want certain groups to be targeted, which is what the NAACP is alleging.
Right. So, look, what happens is that the NAACP is claiming that there's a disparate impact, that it's affecting black voters more than any other voters, whites or Hispanics or others. And that's the allegation. We don't know if that's true or not. Obviously, if North Carolina is not following the law, that's a problem. But on the flip side, when you look at it politically, this is an attempt by the Democratic National Committee and, of course, the Clinton campaign to help turn out black votes, because they are sagging behind in black votes. So that's really what it is. So whether or not the allegation is true or not, it's more towards a political play that the Clinton campaign needs help getting a black vote.
Eric, what do you think about that? Do you think that's part of the drive? Or
Oh, Richard, come on, that's a little poppycock. The Republican Party is trying to suppress the vote. Trump has told people we're going to have poll watchers. We're going to watch you go to the polls.
I just want to be clear on this case, though, that the Republican Party isn't the one that's trying to remove people from the ballot. They're individuals, and in the state of North Carolina, it's an individual that said that an advocate in the area and says we're trying to get this right. So I just want our viewers to be clear about that. Go ahead.
You are totally correct. In reference to this particular lawsuit, you're totally correct. But the overall picture with Trump's things that Trump is saying, telling people they're going to have poll watchers and people are going to watch them go into the polls and possibly intimidate voters, those are the type of suppression tactics that are being utilized and really trying to stifle the African American vote. So that's why I believe, and I'm sure of, next week there are going to be a flood of lawsuits because of voter suppression, and that's going to be one of the major issues.
Richard, just ending with you, because it's my understanding that you're going to be doing some looking at some of the voting. And if you're not on a list and you show up to vote in the state of North Carolina and otherwise, can you still vote?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I was the Help America Vote Act. Under the Help America Vote Act signed by President Bush in 2002, you're entitled to a provisional ballot. Nobody will be denied the right to vote at any polling center because their name is not on the rolls because of the Help America Vote Act signed by Republican President Bush. At the end of the day, these are allegations that need to be proven. And so far, they haven't been proven. I think I saw one person who was 100 years old, and she had a mailing address as a P.O. box. You cannot use a P.O. box as your voter registration address. You can use it to receive mail, but you can't use it to vote. It has to be a physical address to vote. And so that allegation right there is a violation of law. Again, post office boxes cannot be used as a physical address for your voting.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Richard, Eric, we're going to have to leave it there. But I think to underscore, as we continue to look for evidence in this case, I think it's interesting to end on the point that everyone can show up and vote. And we should all do that.
Show up and vote. And I'll be out there in Philadelphia trying to protect the vote out.
All right. We look forward to talking to you both again. Eric, Richard, great to have you. Thank you.
Same here.